I declare the Ordinary Council meeting of the 8th of April 2023 held in Council Chambers at the City of Subiaco open at 5:30 p.m. Welcome everyone. On behalf of the City of Subiaco, I acknowledge that the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional custodians of the area. We recognise their cultural connection to the land and waterways of Subiaco and their continuing contribution to our city. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and by being present at this meeting, members of the public consent to the possibility that their image and voice may be published online. Okay, attendances. We have one late apology from Councillor Stroud. We have Councillor Lynette Jennings attending electronically by video link, and all other councillors and myself are accounted for in person. We're assisted by the full executive leadership team this evening, 4 of whom are attending in person, and of course we've got Emma Wollaston, Director Corporate Services, assisting us by Zoom. Okay, leave of absence requests. Councillor Gary Kosovich has requested a leave of absence for the period 27 August 2023 to the 23rd of September 2023 inclusive. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor De Vries and Councillor White. All those in favour? Okay, the leave is approved unanimously. Disclosure of interest. Are there any disclosures this evening? Councillor Hammersley.
Thank you. I, Angela Hammersley, wish to declare an interest in agenda item C3. The type of interest I wish to declare is impartiality, pursuant to clause 22(2) of the Code of Conduct. The nature of my interest is I played water polo with 2 of Merv McIntosh's daughters for a number of years and therefore had a friendship based on membership of a team and a club. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other disclosures? All right, there were no questions taken on notice, so that would take us to public question time. Looks like we've got 2 questions submitted in relation to matters unrelated to tonight's agenda, but that's the beauty of this grassroots democracy that we call local government. We've got Ross Carson from 2J Road, Gidgegannup, and Mr Tony Costa of Forest Street, Subiaco. Welcome in particular, Mr Costa. It's always nice to be joined by a former mayor of the city of Subiaco, so welcome back. Okay, we'll take them in the order I've just mentioned, beginning with Ross Carson of 2J Road, Gidgegannup.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is, have any meetings, beg your pardon, we also find it omnipotent that now that our request for a definitive decision from the city is needed so that we can subsequently, excuse me, I've had a stroke so my words don't come out too well, so that we can subsequently pursue the state government to ensure that the Muir Park Class A facility remains untouched for the Subiaco's community's enjoyment for perpetuity.
Thank you. Director Development Services, could you answer the question, please?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, and thank you for your question. The City of Subiaco is not presently making any decisions about Muir Park, and therefore the context in which this question is being put to us is not entirely clear. But what I can say is that the City is not aware of any changes to the classification or the use of Muir Park, and the City absolutely supports the retention of Muir Park as public open space.
Thanks, Mr Petrosky. Tony Costa.
Subiaco Municipal Oval. Question: have any meetings been convened yet. Can we be provided with a current update on what has transpired in this regard with the state government, please?
Thank you, Mr Costa. CEO, Colin Cameron.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tony. The City of Subiaco has made its position clear to all relevant state government agencies and members of Parliament over a number of years. The Council wrote to the Premier of Western Australia and the Chair of Development WA in May 2020, advocating for the inclusion of additional active playing fields in the Subiaco East redevelopment. In July 2021, Council again wrote to the Premier and Chair requesting a meeting to discuss the provision of additional playing fields. Although the Premier declined the request outright, the City has raised the matter of sports space in Subiaco East in various settings, with numerous state government ministers, federal and state parliamentarians, state government agencies including Development WA, the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries, the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, and the Department of Premier and Cabinet. The City, however, is not aware of any unannounced changes to the planning framework set for the Subiaco East by the state government.
Thank you, CEO. Okay, there were no public statements submitted and no petitions and approved deputations. So that brings us to confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. We've got a single set of minutes, being those of the Ordinary Council meeting of the 21st of March 2023. A mover and a seconder for those minutes, please. Councillor Kosovic and Councillor De Vries. All those in favour? Okay, the minutes are accepted unanimously. Now, an announcement. Councillors, I've just returned back from several weeks' leave, having added to the population of Subiaco with the arrival of Isabel Sally McMullen. So you'll have to forgive me if I've got baby brain this evening, but I'm sure you'll go gently on me. My thanks to councillors and senior staff for carrying on with the job, just as you always do, and to Councillor Stephanie Stroud for being ever ready to step in for me. She must have worked so hard as Deputy Mayor that she's taken ill this evening, so my thoughts are with Councillor Stroud. But there's a noticeable lack of spot fires to put out, so the City of Subiaco machine is functioning well. Now, it was quite serendipitous today to be back at St John of God Subiaco Hospital, actually. I was there to celebrate the 125-year anniversary of the hospital. And it just makes me think it's funny how the more things change, the more things stay the same. 125 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, you could have delivered a baby at St John of God, you could have gone to the Subiaco Hotel for a pint, and then you could have dropped the kids off at Subiaco Primary School. Although maybe not in that order. You also could have called into the Subiaco Road Board to pay your rates. Now, as Mayor, I find that attending events like the St John of God celebration to be quite an honour and a great reminder of where Subiaco's come as a city, and it fills me with just a little bit of pride at the role we play as a council and an administration in carrying on the Subiaco legacy now and into the future. With those words, I think we should move on to some decision making. Okay, there's a possible en bloc vote this evening. The possible en bloc vote I've got in front of me would comprise of items D1, C1, C2 and C6. Does anyone wish to pull any of those items? Councillor Hammersley.
Thank you. C2, thanks.
Sure. Yeah. So the remaining en bloc item would consist of D1, C1 and C6. All those in... a mover and a seconder for the en bloc vote, please. Councillor Hammersley, Councillor Kosovic. All those in favour? The en bloc vote is carried unanimously. Okay, so we'll move on to C2, the award of tender A7148 for the Subiaco public Christmas decorations. We've had no amendments or alternatives submitted, so I'll look to Councillor Hammersley, I suppose, for either questions or nothing like that. Okay, well, I'll have a mover and a seconder and then I'll take questions. Councillor De Vries. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Jennings. Councillor De Vries, did you wish to speak? Councillor Jennings. Councillor Hammersley.
Thank you. I've actually asked for this to be taken from en bloc because I'm going to move a procedural motion just to put it off for a month. The reason being is that I think we all know Councillor Stroud has been making some inquiries and doing some work on this issue, and she's ill and unable to attend, and I'm hoping that this will not mean that Christmas is cancelled if we just take another month to allow for her questions to be answered.
Okay, so we'll take you as moving the procedural motion.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Probably 7.1A.
Any seconder for the procedural motion? Councillor Kosovich. All those in favour? Anyone against? Okay, the procedural motions. Yep. Well, I assume you're voting against, Councillor Jennings. Yep. So, I think so. Councillor Burns, I thought I saw you vote for the procedural for the procedural motion. Is that correct? Okay, so the procedural motion is carried 6-2. I knew it would happen. Okay, the procedural motion's carried 7-1. So we move on to the next item of business. Okay, so that's C3, proposed new road names for Subi East Development Area. We've got an amendment from Councillor Jennings, which essentially completes the officer recommendation, which at present doesn't have any road names inserted. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation, and then we'll deal with the amendment. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor De Vries and Councillor Kosovich. Councillor De Vries, wish to speak? Councillor Kosovich? Okay. Councillor Jennings, did you want to test your amendment at this point? We'll have you moving your amendment, and I'll see if there's a seconder for Councillor Jennings's amendment. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Hammersley. Okay. Councillor Jennings, did you wish to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, I just wanted to clarify as well that it's not just filling in the two candidate street names. It's also, it did add in that extra part in the motion that there would be a small explanatory sign underneath, put this at some point to explain the background of the persons who the streets have been named after. And that was partly because I wanted to indicate, particularly in the case of the choice that I put in for Chuck, that it is a woman, and it's Adelaide, I think her first name is, and so that it's understood that it's actually a woman's name. It's not named after another chug, because there are other chugs in Subiaco. I think Adelaide Chug's father was also a notable person in Subiaco. And just and I put that in my reasons as well, that I think it's all the persons were candidates, or the names were worthy and do have appropriate connections with Subiaco, but all being worthy, then I think to to rebalance the historical sort of imbalance that's applied, where though there's been worthy women candidates or citizens and members of society who have connection with Subiaco, and similarly with Indigenous people, they none of them, or they're rarely honoured. So I think that it would be appropriate to honour the people that I've suggested. There are other candidates in there, so that could be equally worthy of being named. But and I also did this just to try and foreshorten the procedure that I know we're going to have to go through if we go through various permutations and ballots, or somehow to choose names. So so I'll just leave that with you and commend that to you, and to save us all some time and effort, and still choose two worthy names that I've suggested. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Hammersley.
I found this a very difficult exercise to pick 2 out of 8 because they are all worthy. But I think I too have come to the view that it's an opportunity to recognise both a female and also someone with connections to the Aboriginal community, albeit through football. However, I think football's a very important part of our state story, and I think both of the candidates that were put up were very interesting, and I did a bit of extra research on them, found a little bit more out about each of them. I'm sort of, it was very close, but I thought with Mr. Blurton, I'm hoping that the Sandover Medal and its forebears will be well recognised within the work that's being done within the Oval. So that really left me with Mr. Collard, and it's pretty impressive what he did in moving across the country to take his ambitions forward, and he had a pretty hard time in doing that. And I suppose just on a personal level, both names are recognisable, and perhaps particularly the Collard name, as a person who was born in Western Australia and grew up in country Western Australia, it is a name that's very familiar, and I think I'd be very happy to see it on a street name in Subiaco. So I'm prepared to support Councillor Jennings' amendment. Thank you.
Any speakers against the amendment? Another speaker for? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor McMillan. I find myself in agreement with the amendment, and in agreement with the words of Councillor Hammersley to a degree. So take this with a pinch of salt. I looked over this and I see it. It's a very serious item. Nothing that's happened in the past has anything to do with what's happening today. We have many street names named after respected gentlemen that have very strong associations with even the streets that those names are after them. Most of those streets are actually then identified underneath what the association is. And historically, that's a society that we've lived in. But I'm not personally in favour of equalisation, for want of a better word, that, all right, so we've got too many men in Parliament, we need more women, so what we'll do is, balance it out and do it by things. There's some women that think that's a great idea, and there's some women that actually are offended by it because they think they don't want to rise by anything other than their own credentials, not by their how they were born. So in looking at this, I find myself in agreement with the two names, but I viewed all the names individually. But you look at it and say to yourself, somebody like Tom Dador. Well, Tom Dador's, it's impossible to ignore him, but at the same time, we have photos of him all over the building. He's got he even has a building named after him. So his recognition might be, in essence, one could say, outweighs that of other names that have, the two names that have been put up. But then he already has been accepted by past councils, as deserving of recognition, and especially when you look at his effect on the attempt by the Liberal Party to amalgamate councils. It was extraordinary that somebody out of Subiaco was such a key player in what crushed the amalgamation attempt. So, as I said, I looked at this without consideration of race. I can't think of the right word, sorry, but pardon? Gender, thank you. I very much appreciate that because I was going to be lost for a while, Councillor De Vries. Without race, gender, religion or anything else. Look, they're fine names, okay, and the other people are fine citizens and have played their part, but I just did want to lay it out that I think the best thing in moving forward is to see people as to who they are, not the colour of their skin, not their gender, not their religion, or their influence, or anything else. And I think the names that are put forward have achieved that across the board. Unfortunately, we picked two, but at the same time, there are going to be more roads, and we're going to have more opportunities. So I throw my weight behind the amendment, and I'm very grateful to Councillor Jennings for putting it forward, because I have no idea what we were going to do otherwise in some sort of debating deal on or what electoral system the CEO was going to suggest that we were going to use to put two names onto it. So I'll leave it at that. I would hope that we put this to rest pretty well, but I'd also like to hear from my fellow councillors if they wish to speak, and I thank you for hearing me.
Thanks, Councillor Burns. Any other speakers? Councillor De Vries.
I think
Sorry, I should clarify that we're still dealing with the amendment.
Doing closing. I fully agree with Councillor Burns that this was a great move by Councillor Jennings, so that, and in fact, these were the two I chose, so that makes it really easy for me to support it. But I think it's really important to mention that the Subi East Wadjuk Elders Group and the WA Football Commission, via their engagement with Development WA, did put a number of names forward, including Collard, Dador, Blurton, Kettlewell. So I think this is great that we're taking suggestions from our elders in our community, and it would be something that I would encourage us to do more, because they certainly have been here for a lot longer than we have. So if we can have one name in one street, I hope we have many more names named after significant people from Aboriginal heritage, both contemporary and historical. But certainly the achievements on the football field cannot be underestimated at a time when discrimination was so rife in Australia. So 100% support the name of Collard. And also, well, I tend to disagree with Councillor Burns on whether women should have equal representation. Of course they should, and so should our streets. So I'm very, very pleased that Adelaide Iya Chug we'll have a street named after her. It's a pity it can't be Adelaide Chugg, the whole street name, but we can't do that. And it would be great to recognise how difficult it was for women at that time to receive an education, and an education she got. She was a teacher, I believe. I don't know whether she actually taught, but it would have been quite an achievement in 1937 to go to Trinity College of London and become qualified. So I think it's great, both names I support, and I support the genesis of where those names came from. And I do believe it was Councillor Jennings who put forward a few women. Is that correct? I just need to check, but thank you again to Councillor Jennings for making sure that women were included in our list, because that would be an omission if they weren't there. So I do so support the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Kosovich, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. I too would like to support the amendment and am very pleased to see that we do have Aboriginal names that we're looking at, and two very worthy people tonight. I see that Mr. Collard was more than worthy for his feats on the football field, and no doubt Ms. Chugg is as well. All of the people that we have before us are no doubt very deserving. And I take Councillor Burns's point that in time, with many streets, particularly with Subi East coming up, that they too will be probably given an opportunity to have their names up, and in recognition of the distinction in which they served our community in various forms. I think it's very important that we do acknowledge women in our community. I do see it as a little bit of affirmative action, I think, not before time, and similarly with our First Nations Australians. Remembering, of course, that the only Indigenous name that we have is Lake Julba, and I think that shows that it's more than time that we looked at this in the current circumstances. So I'm endorsing the amendment. Thank you.
Any other speakers to the amendment? You have spoken, Councillor Burns. Okay, a question about the amendment.
Well, I gather it's about the amendment. Councillor De Vera's raised something that actually I'd forgotten, in saying that it's a shame that Adelaide Chugg couldn't have her whole name. But then, but I know there are certain guidelines that come out of the United Kingdom and on how streets are named. But how do we have Hayden Button Drive? That's two names, and we can't call it Adelaide Chugg. So is there a possibility to actually put forward the name and make a minor amendment to what we return to whoever we're returning this to, and say that we would actually prefer it to be Adelaide Chugg, okay, then now how do you get to Hayden Button Drive? What's so special about him? I don't even know who the guy is. I think he can, pardon? Oh, I'm not into football, sorry, can't help you there. And just on one last point of clarification, I'm not totally against affirmative action. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thanks for the question and the personal explanation. Director of Technical Services.
Thank you, and through you, presiding member. So what we did at the request of councillors when we did raise this earlier last year, we did actually request through the Geographic Names Committee, who are the ones who basically determine what names are acceptable, all options, so both the surnames, the first name, or indeed both names together. However, they do have very strict guidelines. If you have the time, and I wouldn't suggest that there is a very lengthy guidelines as far as what names are acceptable and how they're applied. Typically, both names together is not typically done for road names, just for, I think, brevity, simplicity, etc. So unfortunately, while we did put up all the names in full, in part, what you have before you are the only ones that were accepted by the GNC. As far as Hayden Bun, all I can presume is obviously that's been named for quite some time, well before these guidelines are in place, and they've become a lot stricter about it.
CEO's got something to add as well.
The guidelines are in place. They are very, they certainly are quite firm in relation to those guidelines through the Geographic Names Committee. However, there is the possibility to appeal. You risk the fact that then the decision's not made and they're trying to name a street and they, because the Geographic Names Committee has rejected that name. Part of those rules include a suburb by the name of Brabham, and that was against the Geographic Names Committee recommendation, overruled by the Minister, because Sir Jack Brabham was still alive when that suburb was named. So I suspect Hayden Button Drive, although I haven't looked up, would have been some appeal, I suppose, to the Geographic Names Committee to name that in full, and then there may well have been ministerial intervention, who knows, or something like that. But generally the actual committee itself stick very closely to their guidelines. So it's probably problematic to try to do it, and then you run the risk of not being able to provide that name through to the Development WA, who are essentially the main authority for this particular, and they might not support it either, I suppose.
Any other speakers to the amendment before I call the vote on the amendment? Okay, all those in favour of the amendment? The amendment is carried unanimously. Okay, so I will be looking for speakers to the substantive item, which is now the officer recommendation as amended. I'll hear from anyone other than the mover and the seconder at this point, if you wish to speak. Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor McMullen. I just would like to add that just because this is going to be such a short meeting, I thought I'd better chat for a little longer so we didn't waste our time coming here. That I did mention Tom Dador had a building named after him. I would note that for anybody that isn't aware, that Ms Chugg also has a building named after her on Railway Parade. It's actually the oldest retail store in Subiaco. It sits, it's a restaurant right now, sits next door to 27 or 23 road, 27 I think, railway, and still sits there to this day and is our oldest retail shop in the city. So I don't think that later on we need to name another building after her, because she's already got one that a family built for her instead, and the name is prominently on the front of it, and it is a very lovely building with a nice Art Deco quality to it, which is very early for that period, early Art Deco for the period. Just, as I said, to take up a bit of your time. Bye.
Does anyone else wish to speak to the item? Councillor De Vries, did you wish to close? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favour? The item's carried unanimously. Thanks, everyone. Okay, that brings us to C4, the WA Local Government Association Best Practice Governance Review, Stage 3 final report. And having just avoided a straw polling situation, we find ourselves with another officer recommendation with a blank space for us to fill out. So what I might do is ask for a mover and a seconder and see if there's anyone who wishes to move an amendment from the floor to complete the item, I suppose. If we can't reach a consensus, then I'm just looking at the dates. We probably won't have an opportunity to participate in the in the feedback process. I suppose that's what it comes down to. But anyway, I'll cross one bridge at a time. Mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation. Councillor Hammersley. Councillor De Vries. Do you want to choose a number to get the ball rolling? Sorry to cut you off, Councillor Hammersley. Which option would you be in favour of?
I'm in favour of option 1, and I don't know if anyone's interested in the reasons, but I'll just give them briefly. It's just a matter that I don't feel myself that I've got sufficient command of the current system or the future proposed system. And given the workload that we've had and the important matters that we've been dealing with, we haven't been able to program this into our busy schedule. So we haven't really interacted together in a meaningful way, well, in any way. And so I just think it's completely undercooked in terms of representing that it's a council view. So in those circumstances, and adding to that the fact that I don't think our influence is very great. In fact, I don't think we have any influence. So given all that, I just think the best thing is not to provide a response, noting that if any individual elected member has done the work that they feel provides them with sufficient ability to make a response, we're all able to do it as citizens because there's a public consultation process going on. So option 1 for me. Thank you.
Councillor De Vries.
Yeah, I came tonight thinking I had to make a decision, but I feel having read as much as I could, this is a huge amount to go through and to consider. I know that there is marginal support for the first option in terms of not this option 1, but the 2-tier model with a board policy council of 25 members and then zones. And there were good arguments for it, but there were also arguments for keeping the existing model. And to be perfectly truthful, after reading it, I think I was more confused than I was at the beginning because there's a huge volume of arguments and the methodology that was used really confused the data. So I feel, again, it's probably our influence in this is probably quite minimal. I would have probably needed at least 2 days to wade through all the documentation and weigh it up. So 2 hours just isn't cutting it for me to make a firm decision. So I support that we do the option 1, not the option 1 of the summary of models, but bearing in mind that I think that is going to happen. I think the 2-tier model is probably what will happen on the weight of the evidence that's provided to us. And I also feel that decision we won't have much influence on it. So I support that we don't provide a response to Walga. Thank you.
Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor White.
Excuse me, just briefly. I mean, I remember responding to the survey and the consultation process and proposing, showing which option I like, and that's not what they're proposing. But I think their process was a good one. And so, in a sense, I agree, it's a lot of work to do it. I remember going through the material it took quite some time. And yeah, they haven't reflected my view in this, but actually, I don't think that's terribly significant. I think the process that they've gone through in terms of engaging and the sorts of information they've got seems to be pretty rigorous and good, and I would support the amendment. Amendment? Yeah. Option 1.
Okay, so just to confirm, we're debating the officer recommendation with option 1 already inserted. So any Any final speakers on the recommendation? Councillor Jennings.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify when we're saying the options, we're talking about the options on page 19 of the report. Actually, I've got the briefing agenda, but I presume that's the same as in the council one. Got the hard copy before me. So we're talking about option 1, council may resolve to not provide a response to welfare. I just want to make sure that we're not talking about, option 1 in the models that were put up. So.
Yeah, thanks for seeking to clarify that, and that's the intention in the room, that we're talking about option 1 as listed at page 19 of tonight's agenda. Option 1 being that council may resolve to not provide a response to WOLGA in relation to the Best Practice Governance Review Steering Committee final report. Any final speakers before I invite the mover to close? Okay, Councillor Hammersley. I'll call the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Okay, councillors, we're up to the final item of the evening. It's C5, the budget review for March 2023. It was not included in the en bloc because it requires an absolute majority. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor Kosovich? Sorry, you've got a question, do you? I have a question. Okay, yep, I'll take the question and then I'll look for a mover and a seconder.
It is a financial question that I did raise at the agenda briefing meeting last week, and it's in relation to a report in the Post in relation to costs. I've got to get it in at this point. The Post carried a story that there was a $351,000 cost, and I did ask at last week's meeting, I did put the question to Director Wollaston and would ask her to respond, if she has a response to that, please, in relation to what that cost did comprise. It was post the fire, the recovery, the clean-up, etc. If she could just elaborate on that, please. Thank you.
Director Corporate Services.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Kosovich, and through you, presiding member. So you'll see in our monthly finance report that there is actually a reference to $357,452, and that relates to expenditures made under the emergency provisions of the Local Government Act and its associated regulations in relation to our response to the fire, which did occur at the admin building. So those costs relate to various things that we needed to do to make safe and clean the area, to repair and replace the damaged assets, and to provide for business continuity in connection with the fire. The nature and the amount of individual expenses are further detailed within our monthly finance report. We have lodged a claim with our insurer and have received confirmation that the policy responds to our claim.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, so a mover and a seconder for C5, please. Councillor Hammersley and Councillor Kosovich. Councillor Hammersley, did you wish to speak? Councillor Kosovich? Anyone wanting to vote against the item or speak against? Okay, I'll call the vote then. All those in favour of C5? C5's carried unanimously. Councillors, there were no elected member motions submitted this evening. There's no urgent business to deal with, no confidential items. So I declare the City of Subiaco Ordinary Council meeting of the 18th of April 2023 closed at 6:14 p.m. Thanks, everyone.